To discuss this, we're joined by Judy Josser. He's the founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Judy, thank you for being with us. Judy, the president is getting a lot of criticism now for his criticism of Congresswomen Omar and Tlaiband. What's your general take on all of this?
Well, I have to tell you, he's perfectly right. And why do they become the torchbearers or the standard bearers for Muslims? I mean, at the end of the day, they were deceptive. They really had no desire to seek any balance in their trip to Israel. They were clearly on an agenda driven by the BDS movement. It's not a moderate movement. It's a movement that has associations with the PFLP, with Hamas, with other terrorist organizations. And yet its end point is only the destruction of Israel, the economic shutting down of the entire state of Israel. And they proved it by having a press conference when they came back calling for a readdressal of the appropriation to Israel, a country that's the only democracy surrounded by so many threats. And they never showed any type of understanding of that. And as a Muslim, I'm thinking to myself, how few American Muslims that I know agree with them, and yet somehow they become, through their radical representation of BDS and others, become the American Muslim voice, when in fact many of us, like the other million Muslims that live in Israel, recognize it as a secular democracy. We realize that there's some issues with the Palestinians, but their greatest enemies are Hamas, not the secular democracy of Israel.
Judy, Congresswomen Omar and Tlaiband have been spinning Israel's refusal to allow them to come on this particular trip as a Muslim ban. To be clear, Israel did say that they would grant Rashida Tlaiband access to come and visit her grandmother. She refused or declined that invitation. Omar's statement said the following, that Trump's Muslim ban is what Israel is implementing. So really pushing that this is some kind of a Muslim ban. I mean, keeping in mind that thousands of Muslims come in via Ben Gurion Airport into Israel every single day. Do you see this as some kind of Muslim ban?
It's absurd. If she had gone on a normal trip where it was balanced, she would have met Muslims in the Knesset. She would have met Muslims that they have Arabs on their Supreme Court. 1 million Muslims live there. It is offensive to me that she's getting confused on her talking points, because especially in Israel, it makes no sense. And yet, when she met with Erdogan of Turkey, which really is turning into a tyranny, she has no press conferences about that real tyranny, or Iran, or other countries which really deserve more attention about human rights abuses than her obsession with Israel. And it's all a stunt. Their tears, the president was right. If they really cared about their grandmother, if Tlaib really cared about her grandmother, she would have, as she asked for in her letter, the reason she changed her mind, Michelle, was after she submitted the letter, the global BDS movement folks started to get really upset that she was acquiescing and that she was giving up. So she changed her mind, and she used her constituency letterhead as a congresswoman to ask for permission, and then retracted it when not her constituency, but the foreign radical movement of BDS told her, oh, don't go visit your grandmother. And then she had these crocodile tears, which shows it's all manipulation. It's the bullies pretending to be victims.
Judy, it's interesting. Some people have pointed out that there was not a word of condemnation from either of the congresswomen against the Palestinian Authority, which just this week has banned any kind of activism from the LGBTQ community. But another point to get into is a rather odd ally that the president has on this matter, Bill Maher. He's a fierce Trump critic, a very well-known liberal, but Maher entered into this fray during his real-time show on HBO. He called the BDS movement and I'm paraphrasing here, BS, purity test by people who want to appear woke but actually slept through history class. Let's watch.
Predicated on this notion, I think it's very shallow thinking that the Jews are in Israel mostly white and the Palestinians are browner, so they must be innocent and correct, and the Jews must be wrong. As if the occupation came right out of the blue, that this completely peaceful people found themselves occupied. Forget about the intifada's and the suicide bombings and the rockets and how many wars. And let me read, Omar Barghouti is one of the co-founders of the movement. His quote, no Palestinian, rational Palestinian, not a sellout Palestinian, will ever accept a Jewish state in Palestine. So that's where that comes from. This movement, someone who doesn't even want a Jewish state at all.
Judy, your quick comments.
Well, I think, as Barry Weiss also said from the New York Times on CNN today, the left has to become more rational about anti-Semitism and addressing the real issues in Israel rather than getting to the extremes of the radicals like Ilhan Omar does.
We'll be right
Thank
back.
you.